In this video we are going to be speaking about cycles in financial markets. In particular, we are speaking about the cyclic principles of a man called J.M. Hurst, who was an American engineer. In the late 1960s, he published a book called The Profit Magic of Stock Transaction Timing, a book which is still available today and which has been very popular over the years. In this book, however, he only presented a small portion of his full cyclic theory. The J.M. Hurst Cyclic Cycles course, which Hurst published in the 1970s, and which is also still available today, presents the full body of his work, and it is this cycles course that contains the true value of his work. Now, what are Hurst's cyclic principles or Hurst's cyclic theory? They have to do with cycles which affect the price movements of financial markets. What are cycles, you might ask? Well, there are many different definitions for what a cycle actually is. But for the purposes of you being able to trade profitably on the basis of Hurst's cyclic principles, it is not necessary that you really understand what a cycle is. What I'm going to do is present to you in this video the basic concepts that you need to understand in order that you can start working with Sentient Trader and making profitable decisions when trading financial markets. And so for the purposes of today's video, this is what a cycle basically is. It is something that causes the price movement of a financial market to move up towards a peak and then to move down towards a trough, and it repeats that action on a fairly regular basis. The distance in time between any two troughs of the cycle is called the wavelength of the cycle. In this video, I am only going to be presenting you with the basic concepts of Hurst's cyclic principles. Here are the concepts that you need to understand in order to start working with Sentient Trader. The first basic concept that you must understand about Hurst's cyclic principles is that there are multiple cycles which influence the price movement of any financial market. In fact, there are an infinite number of cycles which influence the price movement of financial markets, but don't worry about that. You do not need to understand every single one of the infinite number of cycles. All you need to do is understand or know as many cycles as you possibly can. Hurst's cyclic principles differ from many other cyclic theories because of this simple fact. The fact that there are multiple cycles which work simultaneously to influence the price movement of a financial market. Now, before we speak in more detail about the cycles, there is something very important that you should know. That is that the cycles that influence the price movements of financial markets exist in continuous time. The cycles that cause financial markets to move up and down affect those financial markets 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 and a quarter days a year, regardless of whether we are actually trading the financial market in question. Now, what else do you need to understand about the multiple cycles that influence the price movements of financial markets? How are they related? Is it just an arbitrary, random collection of different cycle lengths? No. This is the next important concept that you need to understand. The cycles that influence the prices of any financial market are defined in what Hurst called the nominal model. We talk about an harmonic nominal model because the wavelengths in the nominal model are related by a simple harmonic ratio. Let me explain what I mean by showing you Hurst's default nominal model. A nominal model is simply a list of cycles. Here you can see 3 columns. The left-hand column is the name of the cycle. The longest cycle that Hurst considered it necessary to analyze is, as you can see, the 18-year cycle. Now, the average wavelength in days of that cycle, as the second column, is 6,547.2 days. And the average wavelength in terms of years is 17.93 years. We call that cycle the 18-year cycle because it's much easier talking about the 18-year cycle than it is talking about the 17.93-year cycle. If you look at this table, you will see the full list of cycles that Hurst defined. In fact, Hurst discovered and defined cycles from a length of 18 years down to 5 days. In developing Sentient Trader, we have extended the concept of the nominal model down to the intraday level, and we have been able to find and define cycles all the way down to 3 minutes in length. This is the nominal model that Sentient Trader works with. Why do we call it an harmonic nominal model? Simply because the wavelengths of each of these cycles is related by a very simple harmonic ratio. For instance, the wavelength of the 18-year cycle is related by a ratio of 2 to 1 to the wavelength of the 9-year cycle. Now that you understand that the multiple cycles which influence the price movements of financial markets are not arbitrary random cycles, but are a specific list of harmonically related cycles, we must move on to the next concept, which is the concept of variation in wavelength. It is one of the fundamental principles of Hurst cyclic theory that cycles experience variation in their wavelength. And so, although the average length of an 18-year cycle is 17.93 years, the actual wavelength of any particular 18-year cycle will vary from that average length. The next important concept that you must understand is that cycles which influence the price movements of financial markets, according to Hurst's cyclic principles, have synchronized troughs. We have already seen the list of cycles that are present in the nominal model and which all work simultaneously to influence the price movements of a market. Now it is important to understand that those cycles have synchronized troughs. That means that, of course, they do not have synchronized peaks. Here it will help in understanding this concept if we take a look at a picture. Here again is a picture of one simple cycle. It's a sine wave, which is a representation of that cycle causing price to move up and then price to move down. But now we know there are multiple cycles that work simultaneously. Let's take a look at two cycles, which are here presented, one cycle in blue, one cycle in pink. The resultant effect or influence on the price movement of a market of those two cycles is represented by the white line. Now take a look at the peaks and the troughs of both the blue and the pink cycle, and you'll see that the troughs are synchronized where possible, whereas the peaks are not. This is a very important concept and defines how the cycles work together to influence the price movement of a financial market. And the result of the fact that there are synchronized troughs gives us a particular shape to the cycles as they manifest in the price movements of financial markets. Here is that shape. It looks a little bit like a capital M. That is the shape that results from combining harmonically related cycles with synchronized troughs. Let's take a look at combining three cycles. Here there is a pink-colored, a yellow-colored, and a cyan-colored cycle, all of which have been combined to produce the resultant price movement, which is the purple-colored line at the top. Although this shape is a little bit more complicated, you will see that it nevertheless follows the basic format of the shape of a cycle in a financial market. It looks a little bit like a capital M. Having grasped the concept of synchronized troughs in financial markets, the final concept that you need to understand is the concept of underlying trend. We know that there are multiple cycles that influence the price movements of financial markets. However, we are going to be trading one of them. We are going to choose one of them and we are going to trade that cycle. The underlying trend of a cycle is the sum total of all cycles longer than the cycle that we are focusing upon. And so the underlying trend of your trading cycle is the combined effect of all cycles longer than your trading cycle. It is as simple as that. What do I mean by the combined effect? I mean for each one of the cycles longer than your trading cycle, you need to answer the question, is the cycle causing price to move up or move down? Some of the cycles are causing prices to move upwards, and some of the cycles are causing prices to move downwards. The concept of underlying trend is very important for making trading decisions. And that wraps up our introduction to Hurst's cyclic principles and understanding how cycles work in financial markets. With an understanding of these basic concepts, you can start exploring Hurst's cyclic principles in financial markets using Sentient Trader.